Welcome and thank you for joining us for another edition of The Urban Therapist. I am your host, Eddie Jean Hall Jr., and joining me today, as always, is my good friend and the co-host of The Urban Therapist, Mr. Lewis Rhodes. How you doing today, Lou?
Hey, I'm glad to be here, and I'm sure you got great topics planned yet again.
Oh yeah, we do. But wait a minute, man, I got one question. Where was your music intro?
You mean
No,
my
no, no.
clapping?
Well, it could be a clap, it could be horses trot. I mean, I'm expecting you to come up with something now every show because
How's that?
a whoopee cushion, man, really? A whoopee cushion for your intro?
Party noise maker or something.
That sounds like a whoopee cushion to me, Louis. Okay, but I'm dating myself because a lot of people don't. That's a whoopee cushion. All right, we will keep going. Thanks for joining me today, man. Thanks for setting everything up. And yes, we've got a fantastic show for you today. We have a very special guest joining us a little later on in the show, and we want to let you know that you can reach us on. You can listen to us, I should say, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Lewis has got us all over the place. You know, the one thing I got to get used to, Lewis, looking at the screen and looking up, because I can't see you if I look up there. So y'all know that I'm looking to see what Lewis doing. That's why I'm not looking up there. So just want y'all to know. But we appreciate you joining us today. And our topic for the day is one very special to my heart because as I matured in years and I had the opportunity to meet different people in life, I met people from all walks of life, and I was privileged even before I went into the field of mental health counseling uh, to have people to trust me and to talk to me about things. And learning about the challenges that many of us have been through, it just made me realize you don't know what somebody is going through, and the way they project themselves, you don't know what they had to get to that point to have that strength to become the person who they are because of the traumatic events that have happened to them in their lives. And some of the people that I've met, Lou, and some of the things that they shared with me, that they've been through. And I was like, wow, what, you? And not that, they were too good or anything like that, but just to see the resiliency in their lives and the determination in what they went through to work through those things in their lives to become the people that they became. And then the flip side of that, after becoming a mental health counselor, working with individuals on a regular basis who were working and dealing with the consequences and the residual effects of trauma. Now, trauma is a small word with a big meaning, covers a lot, and we've got a very special person with us tonight, and we're hoping that she's going to come back and be with us again because we want to talk about this topic today. We're just going to start today because there's no way we could do one show on it. But tonight we want to start a special series called Healing Past the Hurt. And tonight's topic of healing past the hurt is dealing with trauma. So we've got a video that we want to start with before we bring on our guest. And Lou, all I can say is let's get to it.
How did I get here? I used to be an ordinary girl. Now I'm just a sex object. I thought of escaping, but they did whatever they wanted with me. I could breathe, but I felt dead inside. When I was rescued, I thought the worst part was over. Then, I realized I didn't know what I was saying. I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. I felt horrified all the time, and didn't know why. I couldn't forget the traumatic event, as they started calling it. Thoughts Images, voices were always in my mind reminding me of the horror I felt there. Even at nights, I dreamed about it. I was afraid of being awake because the thoughts wouldn't disappear, but sleeping terrified me even more. The dreams felt so real. I had the sensation that I never left that horrible place. My family told me to talk about it, but I tried to avoid everything related with the pen, places, men, everything. I just stayed home, trying to forget all about it, but it seemed impossible. My friends and family tried to convince me to get back to my normal life, but I just couldn't. Everything they told me made me mad. I had angry attacks every day without exception. I couldn't go anywhere, nor do anything without thinking about it. I tried, I really tried, but I just couldn't. And nobody seemed to understand it. I was alone. Whenever someone tried to come close, I would push them away. Why would I want them to be close if they didn't get me? I felt like it could happen again. I felt like I would never get over it. I just wanted to be alone. I didn't let people help me, kiss me, or even hug me. I thought there was no future. I wished the pain would stop. I didn't want to live anymore. It took a long time to finally feel alive again.
Joining me this evening is a very special young lady that I had the privilege of meeting a couple of years ago. This is Miss Mimi Culpepper. How you doing today, Mimi? Yeah, it is.
Hi, I'm great. I appreciate that,
All
especially
right.
especially to be called young. I'll accept that anytime.
Well, Mimi, we want to thank you for joining us today. Now, Mimi, I know you are a licensed mental health counselor, but you have some other credentials behind you. And you also have, well, I'm going to give you an opportunity, if you would, to tell us a little bit about yourself. I know that you're a licensed mental health counselor, and you got a lot of other letters behind your name and a lot of experience. So, can you just share a little bit about you with our audience this evening before we keep going?
Sure. Well, I am Mimi. I'm a licensed mental health counselor. I am licensed in the state of Florida as well as the state of Nevada. And all the letters only tell me that I can just do some other work, but is a master's level certified addictions professional and a certified clinical trauma professional. So, a lot of training. I enjoy reading and expanding my knowledge so that I can try to provide the best service to the people that I serve.
Well, we appreciate you being on with us today, and being now that the last set, CCTP, certified
Certified clinical trauma professional.
certified clinical trauma professional. So we got the right person for this topic tonight. Now, one other thing I want to share with everybody is that Miss Mimi was. Is it okay if we call you by your first name? I always ask people that. I don't want to take it
Please.
for granted. Okay, I always ask
I would
people first.
appreciate if you dropped the miss. You call me young and then you added the miss. So we could just go with Mimi.
We can just go with Mimi. All right, got to
Just
check
Mimi.
first now.
Mimi's
All
fine.
right, all right.
Legally clear.
So Mimi, you made me forget my train of thought. Okay, here we go. Mimi. Mimi also has her own private practice. And Mimi, how long have you had your private practice now?
I started the private practice during the pandemic.
Mm,
So May of 2021.
okay, great. And how's
And
things
I
going with your
launched,
practice?
it is going great. It's been a blessing. I launched part time in May of 2021, and January 1st, 2023 is when I launched full time. So it
Okay,
has been a dynamic experience.
great.
So I'm
Now,
very grateful.
before you go, well, after the show, what we're going to do, folks, we'll make sure that you get, or that with Mimi's permission, for those who may be looking for a qualified therapist, that we'll be able to make sure you have her contact information so you can reach out to her. So, Mimi, we're going to go ahead and get started. Um, the topic today, you saw the video
Yes.
at the top of the show. Okay. Now, this particular video dealing with a young lady who was a victim of sex trafficking and then talking about the after effects. And now the video went on to deal with post traumatic, talk about how she developed post traumatic stress disorder. Before we even go there, do you mind talking a little bit about or give us like a general explanation of what trauma is? Because I know some people may see that video and they may say, "Oh, well, I've never been through anything like that, so I don't have trauma. I don't have trauma." But that was one case of an extreme circumstance that happens to thousands of people every day. But we want to
Mhm.
let people know that even if you have not been through something like that, that does not mean that you have not been through or that you are not dealing with trauma. So, can you tell us, as a professional and being certified in that field, what's a general definition of trauma?
Sure. So there's all types of definitions of trauma, but I guess
Okay.
to give a general definition of trauma, it would be more of an individualized, unique experience or set of experiences or events that affect us or impair us in response to a traumatic event. So it is something that had to have been directly witnessed or experienced. So I know sometimes people will say, well, I was traumatized because I watched maybe the World Trade Center collapse. I watched it on video. So it doesn't have the same magnitude. And that would not meet the criteria for trauma per se. So the other part is that we know that it is functionally impairing. So
So,
everyone
when
is
you
going to
say
have,
functionally, if I could jump in, when you say functionally impairing, what do you mean by that when you say it's functionally impairing?
okay, so we know that it's going to impact their cognitions and behaviors. So thought processes, the ability maybe to retain memories. Sometimes it could be flashbacks.
Okay.
Sometimes it could be the ability to retain information, concentrating, and of course, ways numbing and not being able to feel. Sometimes individuals don't even feel emotions. And those unpleasant emotions that come up, they're finding ways to try to avoid that. I mean, naturally, as humans, we are hardwired to not want to. We want to avoid discomfort and pain. But the distress is so intense with the trauma, these individuals are either not feeling or they're finding ways to avoid the pain. And that's another criteria for the post traumatic stress disorder.
So, okay, so if something has happened to me in life that has caused me not to be able to respond, or can I give you an example? And
Sure.
you tell me, let's say if it's a person who maybe is in a marriage relationship
Hmm.
and uh, maybe they cannot uh, be intimate with their partner the way the partner would like them to or they would like to. And it's because of something that happened to them in their childhood or
Hmm.
maybe as an adult. And so because of that event, maybe if the partner says certain things or does certain things or tries to touch them a certain way, they can't respond or they respond in a negative way because of that? Or is it a possibility that they're dealing with some type of traumatic event that has taken place in their life and they've been burying it? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And I'm asking that because, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, have you met people who are dealing with trauma and they don't know it?
Yes. So, and the other part is that everyone, and I want to make sure that I integrate this. This is critical. Everyone that experiences a traumatic event does not necessarily experience trauma symptoms.
Okay. Okay.
So, and there's several factors that would determine, and sometimes it's unknown. So I would, that's, of course, that's the caveat. But your question is, are there individuals who have or are experience trauma responses and they're unaware that that's what's going on?
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
I say that because when you talked about burying and avoiding, like in the video that we watched earlier,
Hmm.
when the young lady said she tried not to think about it, she tried to
Yes.
block things out. When people tried to show her love, um, she pushed them away. I have seen and have met people who push people away, or who even it may seem as though may sabotage their own happiness or success because they feel as though they don't deserve it because of something that has happened to them or something that they've been through in life, and they can't put those pieces together.
Yes.
So how would you
Hmm.
help someone to start to recognize, okay, I may have an issue with trauma in my life, or hiding or burying some type of traumatic events that have happened? How would you work or help that person come to the start the process of healing and dealing with that?
Okay. So I've had I've had over 20 years experience, but the vast majority of my experience has been working with co-occurring disorders. And that would be working with individuals who have a diagnosis of either a primary diagnosis of a substance use disorder and then a secondary diagnosis of a mental health disorder.
Mhm.
So what we find is that there's a high comorbidity between the two. If you find individuals who have a severe substance use disorder, there is a likelihood that there's some type of trauma history. So,
Why is
years,
that?
well, you think about individuals who have gone through. So, a lot of my work was done in the criminal justice system.
Okay.
And with a lot of the clients or patients that I work with over the years, they have shared history or they've shared their stories about childhood abuse, or domestic violence or intimate partner violence. And more importantly, I would say, I guess I'll start with the childhood abuse
Okay.
and not even recognizing the implications, because sometimes we feel that this is something that happened back then, but it has no bearing on me here. But there's still ramifications that still affect us. So, and we hold all that. We hold our trauma in the body. But get back to your question, when someone comes in, and this is, like I said, something that I saw a lot with that population. And even with some of the patients that I see now, they may come in to say, Miss Mimi, I would like to work with you. I'm struggling with some anxiety. But then while I'm completing their assessment, there's trauma history and them not recognizing that this is actually one of the primary issues. So getting them regulated. So a lot of individuals are not in tune with their body. So I do a lot of work with, let's understand your symptoms and minimizing the distress physiologically that you're experiencing. And I'm sorry,
No, no, go ahead. No, no, go ahead. I'm
I
listening.
provide a
You
lot
said
of
something a minute ago.
psychoeducation.
Okay.
So I provide a lot of psychoeducation concurrent with that. So emotional regulation. So whether that is breathing exercises, getting back out into nature, and distress tolerance techniques, so that they can understand what's going on in their body, understand that what this is going on, but also, and while doing all this, while cultivating an atmosphere that is compassionate, where they feel safe, because trauma survivors do not feel safe. They're operating under perceived threat. So, this atmosphere of safety, and this is what's going on, and this is why. And let's get you first feeling better. You're
Okay.
anxious, you're fidgety, you're agitated.
So
You
are you
can't.
saying that that fidgetiness, I know that's not a word, but the fidgetiness and the anxiety could possibly be, for some individuals, not all, could be signs of maybe some buried or hidden trauma.
It could be a trauma response.
Okay. You mind sharing with us while we're on that? Okay, while we're there, because here's one of the things I want to make clear to the audience, everybody listening. And definitely, we don't want you to do any self-diagnosing, y'all. We don't want y'all to do that. That's why I want you to get Miss
No,
Mimi's contact information.
no,
We
no
don't want
self
you doing any
no, Dr.
self-diagnosing.
Google.
Yeah, but we want you to be aware that the way you may be responding and experiencing life and some of the issues that you may have had and may be having in your relationships, not just your relationship with your significant other, but family members, coworkers, could be linked to some hidden, buried, or ignored traumas that have taken place in your life.
I wanted
Yes,
to ask a
Lou.
question too. Um, and I was just curious if Mimi could share, based on at least her knowledge, how prevalent is trauma when it comes to men versus women? Do we have any statistics on like what impact trauma has in our society or in our culture, right? Whether it's, black families versus white
Mm,
families. Do you have any stats to share, or at least from a professional experience? Who's more likely to have experienced trauma or have traumatic events that probably are impacting them even years later?
okay. Well, it depends on what type of trauma we're talking about. What we do know is that it's underreported for men, especially if
Mm.
we're talking about sexual trauma. So, as far as stats, no, I do not have that information. Retaining numbers off the top of my head is definitely one of my limitations. But I would say, reflecting on my experience with working in the population with substance abusers in the criminal justice system, which was working with a lot of men, there was history. I would say a lot of history of trauma. So that would, if that entailed exposure to gun violence, which
Mm,
we know is prevalent, particularly with men of color or men of color. So in certain neighborhoods. So there's that type of trauma. Or in domestic violence relationships, whether they witnessed that from their caregivers.
wow.
So me,
Yeah.
I'm glad. So that was going to lead to my next question, and I appreciate you and everybody listening. I want you to know what we're doing tonight. We're painting with a broad brush, broad strokes right now because we're going to come back later, not later today, but we're going to come back in a few later episodes and be more specific on some aspects, different aspects of trauma. But Mimi, you said something earlier about chemical dependency
Mhm.
in dealing with trauma. And when we talk about trauma, I've read that one definition of trauma is an emotional response to a terrible event
Mhm.
like an accident, rape, or natural disaster.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of times people think if that those are the only main measurements
Mhm.
for trauma. So if I haven't been through a hurricane, Lou, or a tornado, or if I haven't been off the war, or if I haven't been sexually abused, that I have not experienced trauma. So
Right.
why you acting like that. But Mimi, it sounds like you brought out witnessing my mama get beat up by my daddy,
Hmm.
or
Yeah.
witnessing somebody that I love using drugs
Yep.
or getting
Yep.
shot and killed.
Yep.
Working in the prison system,
Hmm.
I can't tell you how many young men and older men I have sat in front of the last few months who shared with me, I was out with my cousin and he got killed. Or
Yep.
the other day a young man was telling me, hey, they would chase me through the hood, man, and they shot and killed my boy. And another gentleman, vehicular homicide. So
Hmm.
witnessing death in any shape, form, or fashion could be a traumatic event for someone.
Yes. Yeah.
So how do you help people start with that? How do you help people, you know, make that first step in saying, I know you talked about earlier about you have people try to recognize their bodies and how they're feeling about things. But how do you start to help people peel back the layers? Because I can imagine, and you can correct me if I'm wrong,
Hmm.
that people don't come into your office and say, "Hey, I'm just suffering with trauma, and this is why." You know, how do you get that ball rolling with people to make them feel comfortable, or to even start the process?
Yeah. Trauma is, yes, it's a very delicate topic. And even the idea of discussing or even having to think, the thought of thinking about trauma for a lot of individuals elicits fear. So,
And can I throw in pain as well?
yes,
Okay.
fear and pain. So, it has to be done, of course, very carefully. So, most importantly, again, I use the term compassion for the sake of redundancy. So, of course, creating an atmosphere that is compassion.
Okay. So if someone
Yeah,
comes to you, you're not going to make them feel as if you're judgmental.
no.
Okay, so somebody who's dealing with trauma, I guess I would assume, can carry that guilt maybe of, was it my fault?
Hmm.
Was
Yes,
it
as they
something
often,
that I did?
hmm, yeah.
Okay.
So this is where the education is helpful because a lot of individuals, yes, that is their cognitive schema. That is what they're replaying and rehearsing. If maybe it's something I did or something I could have done, some preventative measures, and internalizing. And like again, like I said, replaying that, and that just reinforces all of those emotions, those symptoms that they're not wanting to feel.
Okay.
So this is appropriate, not appropriate in terms of we want you to feel this way, but what you have experienced. This is what For what you have experienced, this is your trauma response.
Now,
But
trauma
we
response, that's a phrase I think a lot of people don't know or don't understand. Because again, if we go by that definition, trauma is an emotional response
Mhm,
to a terrible event. And
mhm,
earlier you said that everybody responds to things differently.
it's true.
So one person, what may be traumatic to one person, depending on their makeup, may not be traumatic to someone else. So, what are some of the things in your experience that you've seen people have had to wrestle with, either as far as symptoms of trauma are concerned, or maybe even traumatic events themselves?
Well, that is going to vary per individual. So
Hmm.
as far as wrestling with the past and having to reckon with a violation that has occurred or
Okay.
them being robbed of a part of their life. So, something that also occurs with trauma, what is called dissociative amnesia. So, sometimes individuals may not remember certain parts or even key parts of their life. So I don't remember these things.
Is that
Yeah.
like so that's a protective
It's a
measure
defense,
for
yeah,
me
it's
to
a defense
block that out?
mechanism. Yes, where our brain, so complex and yet so sophisticated. So it has these protective mechanisms that are put in place that keeps it safe.
So even though I might block it out because it's happened to me, I know there's a book called I believe it's
Body
called The Body Keeps the Score.
by Bessel van der Kolk.
Okay.
Yes.
No,
Mhm.
I'm glad you pronounced his last name because I can't do it. So, I could just tell you the book.
Mhm.
But so with that and what you're saying is so even though I might mentally block out some of the memories, my body,
We're
because
holding it
I've been
all in
through
there.
that, I'm
Hmm.
holding it all in there. Is
Yes.
it is it possible for me to hold it in for years and years and
Oh,
years?
a lifetime, you
Okay.
know.
So is it ever a thing? Is it ever a good thing? Okay, let me make sure I ask this right. Is it ever a good thing for people to ignore or continue to pretend that something didn't happen to them and they're over it if they've never gotten help for it?
Mm.
And I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but this is one of the things for the urban therapist, and we really value and we really want your professional opinion on this because in certain communities, and especially in our community,
Hmm.
there I I didn't hear that word trauma growing
Mm-mm.
up, and even as a young adult, and traumatic event counseling. It what the only
Therapy,
counselor I
yeah.
knew was the high school counselor, with a paddle. That's the only kind of counseling I knew,
Hmm.
Yeah, I was
and
gonna say the best way we deal with things in our community is not talk about it,
That's
right?
right. That's right.
and
Well,
find those
pray about it.
alternatives.
Just pray
Right.
about it.
Pray it,
And
pray about it,
Yep.
and the other alternatives. Mimi, would you talking about like I know other people get high and stuff too, but getting high, drinking, hey,
Yeah. Yeah. There's all type of avoidance, unhealthy avoidance tactics. So yes. So we could just say it. We have to destigmatize therapy and asking for help in particularly in the Black community.
okay,
We have to get rid of this culture of secrecy. But yes, it has been engraved generation after generation. And so
so
many people
go ahead.
have been hurting as a result. No, this is that we don't talk about this.
mm,
So okay, so then I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. Then, so then are you saying that this is something? If somebody's listening tonight or today, whatever your time zone might be when you're checking out this show, that is okay to face up to and to face the monster that's still under your bed,
Mm,
whether you're 50, 15, or whatever. It's okay to face that monster that's under the bed. Is it safe for me to say that?
it is safe. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Because Mimi Lewis, one of the things that Mimi has brought out, and she said it very succinctly, as a people, we've been taught to keep it at home, and rightly so. It's been cultural,
Hmm.
but times and the culture has evolved, and that evolution has now created safe places and spaces for us to be able to get the help we need. Like for example, uh, Mimi seeing a African American female mental health professional years ago when I was even a young man or would not have seen that. Even for me, as an African American male, just as a male, period, you didn't see a lot of men
Mm-mm.
in this field, you know. And so the things we deal with and dealt with, having somebody that we could look at that we could relate to, it wasn't there. But now it's there.
That's right.
The cultural aspects, we understand. So, Mimi, we appreciate you joining us tonight. And I want to reemphasize that Mimi is available. She has a practice. Now, do you do what's it called? Do you do telehealth
Telehealth?
as well?
Yeah, I
Okay,
do.
you do telehealth as well. Okay,
Yes.
so she does telehealth as well. So we'll have at the end of the broadcast contact information for you where you can get in touch with Mimi if you'd like to, talk to her and find out how she might be able to help you. Mimi, is there any last words that you want to share with us before we let you go today?
I would say, in terms of trauma, if there's anyone out here who's listening and has been contemplating, or if there's anything that came up that speaks to you, that reinforces that, you know what, I need to speak to someone, I'm tired of hurting, reach out. Reach out to someone. There's so many resources that are available. You can go to Psychology Today, therapy for Black girls, a confidential, safe space. You don't have to continue to hurt.
We appreciate that. And I want to reemphasize for those of us, for some of us who may have turned to drugs and alcohol or whatever, gambling, sexing out to try to deal with the pain, Mimi is skilled in helping you work through that addiction and deal with the reasons why. And it's a process and it takes time. But taking that first step and saying, you know what, I need to do this. This is how you get started. And so, Mimi, we want to thank you again for joining us. We want to thank you for what you're doing. 20 years of experience. That's a lot of experience for a young lady to
Thank
have.
you. Yep.
And we appreciate you being on the
Thank
show
you.
with us tonight. And before you go, we want you to join us because something we do, something we started, it's Lewis's fault. Lewis is over there. We have this spot we have on the show called, what is it called, Lewis? Where is that from? Where's that from tonight, Lewis? What you got? What you got tonight, man? I know we caught you off guard, Mimi. We try to be cautious. We on the cusp of PG-13 and R, but we on the PG-13.
I'm open-minded.
There
so
we go. Good.
Oh, shouldn't have told me that. Because Lewis will tell you, I balance my halo on my horns. But okay, so go ahead.
So the WTF segment, just so that Mimi knows, we go and find something that's happening out in the internet, right? And there's all kinds of great things to talk about. But just kind of, we are going to bring it here. We're going to react to it. And sometimes it's a little bit on a lighthearted side, not because of the content, but just how we see it, right? Okay. So today, I've got a great clip. I'm not even going to set this up. I just want to play it and see what you guys think. And we'll talk about it at the end. How's that? Here we go.
Okay. I don't know how to easily get into this one. So I'm just going to say the headline. Man in Belgium fakes his own death and shows up at his own funeral in a helicopter to teach his family a lesson about staying in touch. Come on. Wow. That's the helicopter. What? The prank was pulled out. I don't know if you can even call it a prank. Guy's name is David Berton, and his wife and children were there, and he wanted to see if they cared about him. The daughter wrote online, this is what the daughter wrote: "Rest in peace, Daddy. I will never stop thinking about you. Why is life so unfair?" Look at how emotional this is. Some people were pretty upset at this, but Berton said he didn't like how he was being treated by some of his friends and family lately. Okay, Frank, Frank, you're up first. Go ahead.
I did a little reading on this, and apparently he's a TikToker. Imagine that. Our friendship's done. If you fake that, to be honest with you,
You're dead to me.
You are dead to me.
Yeah.
Exactly. You know, I think we could have a conversation, maybe go out for lunch, and you could tell me how you feel, and maybe you feel I'm not paying attention to you. But to fake your own death, that is, you know, we only live in this world once in our lives, and life is precious, and it's good to think about death each and every day, but you should never, ever do that to any family member and or friend. That is traumatizing.
It's outrageous.
It's
Tanner.
traumatizing.
I can't believe this is a father.
Hey, it's
Now,
connected to trauma too, right?
That
Look at there.
listen,
Yeah, I caught that.
listen. I'm ready to say the real WTF on that. That was absolutely ridiculous. That man, he needs counseling, not
I
for
was
trauma,
thinking,
but because he
I
had
need to
low
call- what's the name?
self-esteem.
And I was like, I need to give him one of my cards.
Right.
Yeah, you do. That was okay, man. That was a real WTF right there.
Talk about
Can you now?
I was gonna say talk about inflicting trauma. How about that?
I tell you the worst
There
part.
may
Go ahead,
be
Mimi.
there's some else back there.
Yeah. He's got
I
some
tell you
other
what have been back there for
deep-seated
me.
issues.
I tell you what have been back there for me.
You
If
been
I was
causing
supposed to
some
get, nah, if I was supposed to be getting some of that insurance money because he was dead, and I'm thinking, oh well, you know, here's what I'm about to do. Can you imagine if he had a good insurance policy? I'm sure everybody's oh here we go. But then they were counting up what they were about to buy. Now they got to give all that money back.
Well, there's
If
a
we
little
don't,
more
if we don't see him
inside.
anymore.
There's a little bit more inside story on it that I've learned by watching further to that clip. Apparently,
Okay.
he let some of the other family members in on the secret, but just the commitment. I mean, come on, the helicopter, and I mean, the commitment to death. Like you have to like pretty much just not be present or available or on social media. But then the idea that I'm gonna come to my own funeral and see who is there and who is impacted by my loss. There's a name for that, but we're not gonna talk about that here.
Mimi, what would you diagnose just off the top of your head? What provisional diagnosis would you give this dude?
provisional diagnosis that I would give.
And
I
for
don't
those
have
of you who want the provisional diagnosis, this is what we're saying is wrong, but we ain't sure yet.
I don't have enough information yet.
Safe.
Yes, you do.
Being safe.
You just being
safe.
nice. You know what you want to say. It's just not in the medical dictionary. It's just not in the DSM-5. You know
I was like,
what you
yeah,
want to
it's
say.
not in this book.
There you go. There you go.
All right, listen, again, we want to thank Miss Mimi Culpepper for Mimi, now I'm going to put you on the spot real quick. Yeah, would you come back to be with us again?
It would be an honor and a privilege to come back with
All
young
right.
men.
Oh, listen. Oh, be still my beating heart. Listen to it.
Yes.
Thanks, Mimi. And we want to thank
Absolutely.
everybody for joining us today. Remember, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and make sure you check out. Mimi has a website as well, right?
I
You got a
do.
website? Okay, make sure you check out her website. We're
Are
going to
you
get all
gonna
that
Let her
information
give
to
her
you.
details. Mimi, if
Oh, go
anyone wants
ahead.
to look you up, how do they find you?
They can find me on my website at Mimi Culpepper Counseling, MIMICUL Pepper Counseling.com. Or you can find me on Psychology Today, which is probably the most comprehensive directory to find a practitioner for mental health or a psychiatrist. You can go into Psychology Today and you can type my name up, or Therapy for Black Girls, or a number of other platforms, but those are probably the ones that are most regularly used.
Thank
Cool.
you.
I
Or you
love
can
that.
call
Therapy for
me
Black girls.
and
Go for it. Go
at
ahead.
area code 352-448-7960. And
Get that one more time. You got to do it like to do the information. You can call me again at. So you got to do that one more
you
time.
can call at area code 352-448-7960, and we will get
So
back to you at our earliest convenience if we are not available.
okay, and she will get back to you. All right, folks. Again, thank you for joining us for another edition of The Urban Therapist. I'm your host, Eddie Jean Hall Jr., and taking us out tonight is my good friend and the co-host, Mr. Lewis Rhodes, with Miss Mimi Culpepper. Take care, everybody.